Hey, JC3 Students. Have you ever heard the phrase cause and effect? Maybe you've heard it in your science classes or something that you've done in school before all this craziness happened and you guys were still going to school. The idea is that one thing happens, and because of that, another thing then happens. It's a cause and then an effect. Let me give you a couple of examples. Like maybe your mom is in a great mood today. That's the cause. And so the effect is today's the day you're going to ask for those concert tickets. Or maybe the cause is your teacher sprung an unexpected project that's due on Monday. And so the effect is your weekend is now wrecked. Or the cause is I look like a mess today. The effect is I don't feel confident enough to talk to that guy or girl I have a crush on. Or we played terrible in last night's game, and so therefore the effect is the coach pushed us harder in practice the next day. Cause and effect happens all throughout life. There are generally situations where something happens and then we respond to it. It's cause and effect. And in life sometimes we mess up. We slip up, we make mistakes, we drift away from what we know we're supposed to do. And the effect of that, we lose influence with people. When we look bad, we don't influence people as much or as well as we can. And sometimes this happens in a huge way, and sometimes it happens in a small way over time. For me, when I was growing up, I first learned this because I really wanted other people to like me. And so what happened is that even when things weren't necessarily true, I would make people believe that they were true anyway. I would build myself up by telling people things that I may not necessarily have ever done or ever been a part of. And that was my cause. Let's just put it the way that it is. I lied to people. I lied to people to make myself look better. And that had an effect on my life that we'll get to a little bit later. But you see, how we treat people can increase or decrease the effect that we have on the lives of others. Over time, if those influences are negative, people could stop trusting us or stop wanting to be around us, and as a result, we can lose our positive effects slowly over time. And before we even realize it, our relationships have changed, and we end up feeling like we can't ever get back to what we lost. And maybe you can say, hey, I was once a person with a positive you effect on the people around me, but that's just not who I am anymore. And if that is you, maybe you feel that way. Maybe you feel like you used to have a positive effect and you don't anymore. You aren't the first person to feel this way. The Bible is full of people who had positive influences, they lost them, and they were sure that the story was over. But this week we're going to look at a woman whose influence had nearly hit rock bottom. And you need to understand something first. Women in the role in the Bible were very, very different than women today. In their culture, women already had less influence than men, just from the get-go. If you were a woman, you were naturally just lower than a man in the ancient world. And in her culture, they were seen as property, and people believed that they had very little value. And in this case, not only had this woman been born into being seen that way, but she also made pretty bad decisions that led her even further to lose what little bit of influence that she had. And we're going to be checking out a story that happens in Luke chapter 7, and it starts in verse 36, and it says this. One of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, and Jesus went to the Pharisee's house, and he reclined at the table. Now, for context here, when you hear the word Pharisee, a Pharisee was a Jewish leader who was dedicated to following Jewish religious laws. They were a lot like priests or rabbis or maybe pastors even. But because of that, they were confident that they were having a positive effect on other people. But the issue of the rabbis was that they were so confident that they kind of looked down on others who had less influence. We throw around the term high and mighty or goody two-shoes. That's kind of what a Pharisee was. They thought they were so much better than everyone else. So here's our story. Jesus has been invited to dinner by this Pharisee, and he goes to this Pharisee's house, and he reclines at the table. But the interesting thing happens next. Luke 7, verses 37 through 38 say, a woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house. So she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. So it wasn't unusual to wash your feet when you were coming into someone's house. Most people in this day and age, they wore sandals, and the roads weren't paved. They were dirt and dust, and so your feet were dirty. But what was different about this situation was that this woman wasn't using water to wash Jesus' feet. She was using an expensive jar of perfume. And this was more than about cleaning feet. This was an act of worship. And the Pharisees had thoughts about it. When they saw this woman washing Jesus' feet, the Pharisees decided that they were going to say something. So Luke 7, verse 39, the Pharisee who invited him saw this and said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner." You see, here's the thing. The Pharisee thought if Jesus really was who he said he was, he would know that this woman was a sinner and that she wasn't worthy to touch his feet. But the Pharisees had Jesus all wrong. You see, they thought Jesus would back away from being touched by a sinful woman, when in reality, this was exactly the kind of people that Jesus was drawn to, and the kind of people that Jesus drew to him. He preferred it that way. He preferred people with no influence be drawn to him. He preferred people who were sinners to be drawn to him. People who had negatively affected others were drawn to Jesus. Then he turned to the woman and he said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? I came into your house. You didn't give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little, loves little." Then Jesus said to her, "Your sins are forgiven." And that was Luke 7:41 through 48. You see, Jesus, when he looked at her, he saw something completely different. He saw potential, and he saw purpose, and a positive effect for her future. So when it comes to us, no matter what we've done or how bad of a person you think that you may be or how people may see you because of what you are done, you are loved by Jesus. In fact, what's incredible about Jesus' encounter with this woman is afterwards she had more influence than she could have ever imagined, because Jesus, the miracle worker, the one Son of God, had specifically told her that her sins were forgiven. And now she finds herself in a completely new place. She's not this broken woman without influence. She is this woman that has tons of influence, overflowing amounts of influence. Her you effect may have once been almost gone, but it became bigger than she could have ever imagined because her decision to take a step toward Jesus, her story was redeemed in Jesus. Her lost influence, lost reputation, and lost standing weren't lost forever. Because of Jesus, we can change the effect that we have on others. Now, just like the woman in the story had lost influence with people because of the decisions that she made, I told you at the beginning that I had a habit of telling people things that weren't true. Well, eventually that would catch up to me because people found out that I was lying, and I lost influence with people. But what happened in my life was that I met Jesus and learned that being honest was so much better than telling lies. Yeah, people wouldn't think that I'd done these crazy, awesome, extravagant things anymore, but being honest made me someone that people wanted to be around because they knew that I wouldn't lie to them. You see, we don't have to erase the potential for a positive effect. Jesus has always been about new starts and do-overs. I couldn't erase the fact that I was a liar then, but the one thing that I could do was prove that I was a truth teller now. And here are a few steps that you can take to change directions. Reflect. Look back. Look back at the way that you've treated other people. Look back at the things that you've said, the things that you've done, and then ask yourself, What were my motivations? What am I trying to get out of these things? Confess. Go to Jesus and say, hey, I'm tired of being this way. I'm tired of not having influence on others because I'm choosing to put me in front of you and I'm choosing to put myself in front of others. Confess. And then identify a specific step. For me, it was to stop lying. For me, it was to be honest. Maybe for you, it's to be nicer. Maybe for you, it's to not talk about people behind their backs. Maybe for you, it's to share more, to give more. I don't know what it is, but find out what it is for you. Because here's the thing, we're in a very unique situation right now. You're not around your friends all the time, you're not at school all the time, but you have the opportunity to look at your life, find the areas where maybe you are lacking a little bit of influence, and do some real growth and some real change right now. So that the next time you are with your friends, they'll look at you and they'll say, hey, there's something different about them. There's something authentic, something real. And they are someone that I want to be around and someone that I want to be like. And then use that influence to show them that Jesus is the thing that changed you. You see, because of Jesus, we can change the effect that we have on others. Lost influence doesn't have to be lost forever. And the truth is, all of us mess up sometimes. We're all going to make mistakes, and we're all going to make stupid decisions. We take the U effect that we have from positive to negative, and sometimes we need a fresh start, but Jesus makes it so clear in the story that we just read. Nobody in the room gets to say that the story is over but him. And when we take a step toward him, he invites us to give up and to change the effect one step at a time. See you guys next week.